Debt ceiling standoff. As US politicians battle it out over monster borrowing, we ask whether a global meltdown is on the cards. New military threat to Taiwan. Beijing displays next-generation drones and stealth fighters powered by China-made engines.
Britney is free!
Victory for #Free Britney. The US pop star's father is suspended from the toxic conservatorship that controlled her life for over a decade. And abnormal is the new normal, the disturbing link between natural disasters and climate change. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. Political infighting is continuing in Washington over whether the US government will raise its debt ceiling. Democrats want to raise the ceiling before mid-October, otherwise the US could run out of money to pay its bills. But Republicans oppose raising the debt limit or suspending it. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has warned of, quote, financial crisis and a calamity if the situation cannot be resolved. The federal government will shut down on Friday unless a debt ceiling raise or a stopgap measure can be agreed. Faith that the US government can pay its debt underpins the global financial system. A US default would have a major effect on the world economy. To discuss the impact of a possible default, I spoke to Hong Kong-based financial analyst Peter Lewis, who is also the presenter of Money Talk on RTHK Radio 3. I began by asking him how significant was Wednesday's deal to avert a funding crisis.
Well, it's helpful in the sense that it means that the government can carry on paying its workers and paying its bills until December. And it means it doesn't have to temporarily lay off or furlough workers, which has happened in the past. But the crisis is by no means over, because there are two separate issues. One is funding the government so that it can carry on operating. And then the other one is raising the debt ceiling. The US has over $28 trillion of debt. When that debt matures, it needs to be rolled over. The government needs to keep paying the expenses on that existing debt, and it needs to raise new debt as well. Now, Janet Yellen has estimated that the government will run out of money and its ability to continue servicing that debt by around mid-October. She says the 18th of October. And then there is the real possibility that the government could default on its debt, which will be the first time that's ever happened in history. Now, if that were to happen, that would be a very, very significant event.
What sort of impacts would that bring?
Oh, it would bring catastrophe on the financial markets. Remember that US debt, a lot of that is held by foreigners, by foreign governments, foreign corporations. The yield on US government bonds is used as the benchmark for government bonds in other countries all over the world. And also the US dollar is the global reserve currency. It is used for payments in all sorts of ways around the world. It pays for trade, it pays for commodities. So a default on the US debt would bring for sure a crisis to the global financial markets. There
appears to be some brinkmanship being played in the US.
Yes, there is brinkmanship in this. The Republicans don't want to help the Democratic Party in any way increase the amount of debt above this $28 trillion, which is ironic because under Donald Trump, when they made their tax cuts 3 years ago, that added a huge chunk to the existing debt pile. But now that the Republicans are out of office, they seem to be concerned all of a sudden about the amount of debt and trying to constrain it. It is a problem for sure, but the answer is not to stop the government paying the bills on the existing debt and being able to roll that over and defaulting on the debt. You have to remember that in parallel with this, there's other things happening as well. The Biden administration has two very big spending bills that it's trying to get through Congress. There's a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, which has been agreed with the Republicans. It's a bipartisan bill, but that's stuck at the moment. Because the Biden administration also has a $3.5 trillion investment bill. And it wants to use that to expand social care, education, all sorts of other things to help improve the social safety nets, which the Republicans are completely opposed to. And a number of key Democrats are also opposed to as well. So these two bills are currently stuck. And the risk here is that if they don't get passed in some form, the whole Biden economic agenda is starting to unravel.
China has been showing off its military prowess at Airshow China in the southern city of Zhuhai. The six-day event offers a close-up look at China's newest homegrown military aircraft. This year's event features new fighter jets, stealth technology, drones and other high-tech weapons hardware. China is looking to be a serious player in the international arms market. To find out more about China's latest weapons and the threat they could pose to Taiwan, we spoke to Dr. Stella Xu of the Institute for National Defense and Security Research.
有一些新的装备，像例如说这个解放军空军的这个最新的战机，像例如说歼20，然后歼16D。那歼16D是一种这个歼16作为电战用的电子攻击机哈。那它的功能，这个外界有很多猜测，但是不是很清楚它的这个实际的这个作战能力。那其他还有包括像这个展出歼31哈，那可能会竞争这个中共003航空母舰的这个舰载机，它的这些这个航空军事能力，当然不止对台湾哈，对这个周边国家也是非常大的威胁。歼20这种逆中战机，未来迟早会变成它的空军的主力，可能在这个10年之内哈。那这个对台湾的空防就是一个很大的挑战，因为这个逆中战机可能这个侦测的这个台湾的那个雷达侦测能力，那个不一定能够这个有效的这个防范。那歼16D呢，可能会对台湾的这个雷达啊，这个防空系统等等啊，那个造成这个相当大的威胁。那其他像包括这个无人机等等哈，那过去被认为说那个中共会用飞弹攻击台湾，那这个台湾可以做这个战力掩蔽，但是这些新的这种迹象，例如说这种攻击机、这种逆中的无人机，那当然它也是这个采用逆中的设计，可能对台湾的这个雷达哈，这个防空系统呢，一样也是一个挑战，可能这个对台湾就是一个新的威胁。
Taiwan's Air Force has held a second rehearsal for the country's National Day on October 10th. 47 military aircraft flew over the presidential office building in Taipei, including 3 types of fighter jets. The rehearsal also featured a giant national flag carried by helicopter and a display by the Thunder Tigers aerobatic team. Taiwan's president has congratulated former Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida on winning the leadership of Japan's ruling Liberal Democratic Party. Tsai said she hopes that the LDP and Taiwan's ruling Democratic Progressive Party will continue deepening their exchanges while promoting the development of both Taiwan and Japan. In Beijing, China's foreign ministry said it is willing to work with the new Japanese leadership team on furthering cooperation. Kishida beat COVID vaccine minister Taro Kono in a runoff vote on Wednesday and is expected to become prime minister within days. Earlier, I spoke to Dr. Guo Yuran, a professor at the Institute of China and Asia-Pacific Studies at National Sun Yat-sen University in Kaohsiung. I started by asking him how the two candidates differed in their approach to China.
Kishida is much tougher than Kono. And so, for example, Kishida publicly promised that if he becomes Prime Minister of Japan, he will set up a human rights assistant in Prime Minister office. Second of all, Kishida promised he will have a new ministerial level position for economic security to handle unfair trade practices from China, non-market measures to interfere trade relation between China and Japan. And not to mention, Kishida support Japan to, largely raise their defense budget and because of China. And Kishida also mentioned that Taiwan and Japan should have some kind of security cooperation as countermeasure to China's harass to East China Sea and South China Sea, and also Taiwan Strait. From the past months campaign, Kishida's opinion was very straightforward toward China.
Videos promoting misinformation about vaccines, including that the shots can cause autism, cancer and infertility, are set to be removed from YouTube. The Google-owned video streaming site announced it would remove all anti-vaccine content on Wednesday. The move comes amid a global backlash against social media companies for not doing enough to stop the spread of fake news on their sites. YouTube says the removals are an important step to address false information on the platform. Earlier this week, 25 people were injected with undiluted BioNTech vaccine in New Taipei City. But how are the affected individuals? And what progress is Taiwan making in its vaccination program? Our reporter Sandy Chi has more.
25 recipients were mistakenly injected with undiluted BioNTech vaccine at a hospital in New Taipei City earlier this week. 10 are still hospitalized with symptoms including racing heart and breathing difficulties. But so far, none are showing severe adverse reactions. Whether the recipients should receive another dose is to be discussed after further investigation, local authorities said. Earlier this morning, President Tsai and Vice President Lai Ching-te received their second shot of the locally made Medigen vaccine. Both are following normal procedures post-vaccination and are continuing with their planned schedules as normal. Also this morning, another batch of BioNTech arrived from Germany. It is the third batch of a total of 15 million vaccine doses donated by TSMC, Foxconn's Yunling Foundation, and the Tsai Foundation, but the first with a tailor-made label in traditional Chinese. Foxconn founder Terry Guo said on Facebook that another 8 to 9 million doses will be delivered in weekly batches by the end of this year. Klein Wong and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Tech giant Google says it will provide $1 million to the Taiwan FactCheck Center. The center is a non-profit organization that aims to fact-check information in the public domain. Google says the money will help combat misinformation and fund workshops for those who may be at a disadvantage in the digital era. Coming up after the break, a week before Taiwan decides on whether to raise the minimum wage, there are rumors it could go up by as much as 6%. But not everyone is happy about it. Stay with us after the break.
台湾最有人情味的地方。
Welcome back to TaiwanPlus News. A reminder of our top story. Political infighting is continuing in Washington over whether the US government will raise its debt ceiling. Taiwan's Labour Minister Xu Mingcun told lawmakers on Wednesday she supported an increase in the minimum wage. The current minimum wage is 24,000 NT, equivalent to $862, and the minimum hourly wage is 160 NT. Last year, the government raised the minimum wage by only 0.84%, the lowest increase in 5 years. There are rumours this year's rise could be as much as 6% when the committee decides on this year's adjustment next week. But not everybody is happy.
服务业的这些，假使因为你的提高工资而受到的影响，包括失业率的增加，包括无薪假的增加，包括那些人不能回来上班的可能会被裁员的增加，所有一切的后果由劳动部负责。
Roy Ong, who advocates for higher wages, spoke to our reporter Rick Glowett. Rick began by asking whether a 6% rise was possible.
Well, it looks like it's going to be quite likely because the Labour Minister and the National Development Minister have both said that because GDP per capita the GDP is going to rise by 6%, therefore minimum wage should be increased to a commensurate level.
And what backlash do we see to raising the minimum wage?
There has been actually quite a bit of backlash from the business groups. For example, the Taiwan General Chamber of Commerce chairperson Paul Su, he had fear-mongered. I would say it's fear-mongering because he said that unemployment rate might actually increase with minimum wage increase. But if you look at the unemployment rate in Taiwan over the last few years, it has been very stable and low.
And why should Taiwan raise its minimum wage, do you think?
Well, Taiwan should raise its minimum wage because compared to the cost of living in Taiwan, the minimum wage is actually relatively low. Taiwan's minimum wage currently is similar to the level of minimum wage in countries where the cost of living is actually about 20 to 30% lower than Taiwan. And if Taiwan's minimum wage should be on par with its cost of living, it should be about $35,000 to $40,000.
Gunmen have shot and killed a prominent Rohingya leader in a refugee camp in Bangladesh. Mohib Ullah was a leading figure among Rohingya refugees. He was meeting with other community leaders outside his office when he was shot dead by at least 4 men. More than 730,000 Rohingya have fled Myanmar since a military crackdown in 2017. Mohib Ullah worked with the UN to tally extrajudicial killings and other alleged crimes committed by the Myanmar military against the minority Muslim Rohingya population. Human rights group Amnesty has condemned the Polish government for illegally refusing asylum seekers at its border with Belarus. Satellite images show that Polish authorities pushed a group of refugees from Afghanistan back over the border in August. Amnesty also said Warsaw has not provided the group with food, medical care or shelter as ordered by the European Court of Human Rights. The group remains stuck between Poland and Belarus. 5 migrants died at the border between the two countries in the space of 1 week in September. US pop star Britney Spears has won a legal battle to end her father's 13 years of control over her life. A judge in Los Angeles suspended Spears' father from the conservatorship on Wednesday. It gave him control over the singer's financial and medical decisions. The arrangement began in 2008 while the singer suffered with mental health issues. But Spears has accused her father of emotional abuse in the years since. Fans and members of the Free Britney movement gathered outside the court, some shedding tears of joy as the ruling was announced.
You know, it's deeper than just a Britney Spears thing. The fact that it encompasses a whole world, like it just scratches the surface of conservatorship abuse. I think it says a lot about American values and things like that.
The number of natural disasters have increased. Researchers say they are all linked to global warming.
Extreme weather have been occurring around the world this year. From floods in Western Europe.
Mais non! Oh putain de merde! Non, 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 non! Non! Non!
to South Asia. And heat waves in Nordic region and Russia. Wildfires in North America.
The recent occurring of the extreme weather event, such as a heat wave and heavy rainfall, is tend to be become more frequent because the increasing impact of global warming.
Although climate change is unavoidable, researchers say action is needed.
造成列车停运，乘客被困地铁车厢。当地迅速组织力量展开救援，共疏散群众500多人，其中12人经抢救无效不幸遇难，5人受伤均已送医。
When we try to cut emissions so quickly and so dramatically, we need to change our the way our society or economic activity operating. So change our lifestyle, change the way we use electricity, although warming is still unavoidable, and it's likely that more natural disaster will become frequent and become stronger, but probably it will not be as severe as we project, so we can limit the damage and actually change the way of the humans are living on Earth.
Lava from a volcano on Spain's Canary Islands has reached the Atlantic Ocean, creating steam that could release toxic gases. The lava flow from the September 19th eruption on La Palma has destroyed more than 600 buildings and forced over 6,000 people to leave their homes. People living along the west coast of the island have been told to stay home with doors and windows shut. An army task force is monitoring levels of dangerous gases. Now, faced with the choice between a job in the city or helping to grow the family business, which would you choose? Tsai from Hualien County in eastern Taiwan decided to remain on his father's rice farm. His dedication to building a strong brand and loyal customer base is now paying dividends for both him and his family.
Ngày số cô nhắm bu bị品牌中了，一下肉里面开始家就有一家品牌了。 金十粒钱无会总要爆米，金无钱厝好水好免无路。
Thanks for watching Taiwan Plus. We'll leave you with some images of the birth of a rare Arabian leopard cub. The exotic newborn has fueled hope for the survival of one of the world's most critically endangered animal species. Stay safe and see you next time.